In a newborn, whooping cough doesn't always sound like a whoop. It often starts as a standard cough. Then the infant begins to struggle for air. The breathing becomes rapid, heavy, and then it stops entirely. This is apnea. Despite massive global vaccination campaigns cutting historical infection rates, the World Health Organization estimates this disease still causes roughly 63,000 deaths in children under 5 every year. It remains endemic in every country on Earth. Even in populations with high vaccination coverage, the bacteria cycles through communities every 2 to 5 years. The true danger of pertussis is its ability to hide behind mild symptoms in adults while directly suffocating our most defenseless population. It is an ever-present invisible predator. The culprit is a highly contagious bacterium called Bordetella pertussis. It moves from infected to susceptible individuals through airborne droplets, riding on a cough or a sneeze straight into the human respiratory tract. Inside, rod-like bacteria lock onto airway ciliated cells. They release toxins that physically degrade these cells, causing them to collapse. Destroying this natural sweeping mechanism lets the bacteria evade the immune system. The airway fills with fluid and debris, severely narrowing the oxygen passage. What begins as a minor infection escalates into violent, paroxysmal coughing fits or fatal oxygen starvation. It becomes a harrowing 100-day biological war inside a newborn's lungs. Before vaccines became widely available in the 1950s, pertussis was one of the most common childhood diseases on Earth. Almost every child contracted it, and medical isolation in wards like these was the primary defense. That changed with the introduction of the first whole cell, or WP, vaccines. These early inoculations used killed Bordetella pertussis organisms to build immunity, triggering a steep, immediate decline in global cases and deaths. Because they used the entire killed bacterium, these whole cell vaccines exposed the immune system to a broad array of bacterial antigens. This provoked a robust, long-lasting protective response. But that broad immune response came with a physical cost. Whole cell vaccines had high reactogenicity. About 1 in every 2 to 10 infants experienced distressing side effects, like localized swelling, high fevers, and prolonged crying. Parents and doctors wanted a smoother option. The pursuit of a vaccine that caused fewer fevers and tears inadvertently set the stage for an epidemiological blind spot decades later. Beginning in Japan in 1981, wealthy nations gradually switched to Acellular Pertussis vaccines, known as AP. Instead of the whole cell, these formulas used up to 5 highly purified individual antigens, significantly reducing the harsh side effects. Yet, several years after making the switch, countries relying exclusively on acellular vaccines started reporting a resurgence of whooping cough. Cases were creeping up, particularly in older children and adolescents, whose vaccine-derived immunity was waning faster than expected. Researchers looking for answers turned to a specific animal model, the baboon, whose response to pertussis closely mirrors our own. Baboons given the whole cell vaccine completely cleared the bacteria. Those given the acellular vaccine were protected from sickness, but failed to stop bacteria from colonizing their airways. This revealed asymptomatic transmission. A vaccinated, healthy-feeling adult might unknowingly breathe out the bacteria onto others. Modern science had successfully protected the individual from the sickness, but it inadvertently created invisible carriers. Loving parents and caregivers were now acting as vectors. A World Health Organization review found that when a young infant catches whooping cough, the pathogen comes from immediate household contacts, up to 96% of the time. This chart breaks down the origin of those infections. Looking closely at the data, we can trace the invisible chain of transmission. In cases where the source is identified, 39% originate from mothers, 16% from fathers, and 5% from grandparents. To counter this, public health officials rely on the cocoon strategy, emphasizing maternal immunization. When a pregnant woman receives the vaccine, her body generates specific antibodies. These protective proteins pass across the placenta directly to the newborn, shielding the infant during their most vulnerable first months of life. To seal that protective cocoon, adolescents and adults require booster doses. Regular boosters keep antibody levels high enough to prevent asymptomatic colonization. Protecting a newborn requires looking past individual pediatric care toward a localized collective wall of immunity within the home. Pertussis persists today by hiding in plain sight. In adults, it presents as a nagging, persistent cough, allowing it to circulate undetected. Despite regional resurgences, these vaccines remain highly effective at preventing severe illness. However, observational studies prove that a single dose is not enough. The primary series of shots must be entirely completed to achieve full protection. This brings us to community immunity. High vaccination coverage across all ages is the only mathematical way to shield the vulnerable and stop the pathogen. Pertussis is an evolving enemy, adjusting to our defenses. But we are not defenseless. Every adult who chooses to get a booster shot is making an active choice to spare a child's life. Defeating the 100-day cough requires laboratory science to meet its match in community action. The choice to vaccinate is the choice to let every child breathe freely.